There are few video game features as universal as combat. It is a mechanic seen in many of the most popular and universally acclaimed games of all time. From first-person shooters like Halo to 2D platformers such as Mario, combat is one of the most diverse mechanics, while still being one of the most universal. Because of this diversity, working out how combat will work inside of Hytale will be a challenge, considering we only really have a sample space of 1 when it comes to combat within block games. No, Cube World does not count! Don't really know what to expect when it comes to Hytale's combat. One major thing we'll need to look at in order to understand Hytale's combat is what happens when you die. Well, from this recent Hytale image, we can see a recently deceased player lying on the ground with a gravestone next to them. We have seen what happens to mobs when they die in the past. Their bodies fall to the ground and then disappear. The devs have said in the past that they're looking to change this, so I think that perhaps there'll be like a fading animation, I guess, for the body, as opposed to it just vanishing into thin air. Now, judging by the time that the bodies lie on the ground before disappearing, we can assume that the player in this image was just recently killed. However, you should have seen something a little strange in this screenshot. Seen it yet? If so, then someone forgot to take their meds this morning, because that was not supposed to happen. The thing I wanted to point out is that there are no items lying on the ground around the player like in Minecraft. So what happened to the items? Unless items disappear within literal seconds of being on the ground, I think it has something to do with the gravestone. In almost every mod that adds gravestones to Minecraft, when you die, your items are stored within the gravestone. Because of this information, a lot of things are revealed. For one, it is likely that if you die, your items will not disappear, and you will still be able to get them back even days after you originally died. Unless, of course, item decay still occurs when the items are inside the grave. But there are still a few other, slightly more interesting possibilities that this lack of items could infer, other than them simply being stored inside the grave. For one, perhaps keep inventory is permanently on in Hytale, similar to how it works in Terraria, so when you die, you get to keep your items. Or perhaps, more interestingly, there is the possibility that upon death, your items simply vanish. Gone without a trace. This is certainly less likely, as it does seem like a harsh punishment for just dying. But what if it wasn't forever? Considering void magic has the power to control life itself, what if you could bring back your items for a price? Necromancy would be such an interesting mechanic to explore within Hytale. It would give the player an actual reason to side with the Tavern and want to use void magic. After all, if it has no real benefit, why would you willingly side with the obvious villain of the story? If death permanently destroys your items and the void is the only way to return them, it could create a very interesting dilemma. Be moral and stay by Gaia's side, or give in to the darkness, lose your morality, but have the ability to circumvent death itself. Weapons are another important part of any combat system. In this image alone, we get a lot of information about weapons in Hytale, mostly through annotations above the weapons. It is highly likely you'll be able to see these in-game, likely by simply hovering over the item in your inventory. One main thing that I noticed is that there are 2 different types of weapons within Hytale, one-handed and two-handed weapons. I assume that using a two-handed weapon will prevent the use of your offhand slot, so shields, torches, and more will not be usable in conjunction with two-handed weapons. This is a very interesting and smart move on the devs' part, allowing them to nerf weapons without making them deal less damage or removing any of the interesting quirks that they might have, but instead by just making them two-handed. Now, we also see in this image that different weapons could have special abilities. For example, this demonic sword. Just read the description. Like, it's for my audience retention, okay? Do it for me! Done? Good. I mean, those are some super cool abilities that massively change up the playstyle of the people using them. Now, like weapons, armor works differently to how it works in Minecraft. It looks like it will also provide you with extra health. We also see the attack damage symbol that we see on the other weapons here as well, meaning that armor could have a thorns-like effect by default, damaging the attacker. That's the only explanation I can think of for the inclusion of the damage indicator on the armor's stats. Another, less appreciated aspect, although just as important, is healing and food. Now, we know quite a lot about this particular aspect of combat. It is one of the few aspects that, on the surface, at least, looks simpler than its Minecraft counterpart. You eat and you regain health, simple as that. But dig a little deeper and I believe that it will be more complex than that. Not too complex, but just more than just eat and get health. Okay, so get your speculation goggles on because this part is mostly a concept, not a deeper breakdown of the information we've already seen. So in Hytale, the player has stats like in most RPGs. Health, mana, damage, etc. So by eating different foods, you could increase these stats. Eating healthier foods like vegetables and meats could increase the stats, while not being particularly good in the healing department. Foods that are less healthy could heal you more, but actually decrease these base stats. And hell, let's tie this back into the thing about death. If you die, these stats could be reversed, so even if you don't lose your items on death, you would lose all of your improved stats. Now onto the big one, Minigames. Hytale is being made by Hypixel after all, whose claim to fame is being the biggest Minecraft minigame server as well as the biggest server overall. All of Hypixel's most popular minigames involve or even revolve around combat. Bed Wars? Combat. Skyblock? If I played it, I would assume that it has combat. Sky Wars? Combat. In the sky. Duels? Well, do I even really need to explain that one? Anyway, my point is that combat is integral to any minigame experience, and the Hypixel server is no exception. I think that in minigames like Sky Wars and Bed Wars, there'll be a greater decision-making process. In Minecraft, in terms of weapons, they are all basically just the same thing but with different damage values. But in Hytale, you will need to quickly decide between what weapon you want to use, because they will all have unique abilities. The same can be said for Armour. Overall, I'm very excited for Hytale's Combat. It's been 9 months, 69 videos, and 300 subscribers since I talked about this last, so I thought it would be a nice memento to revisit this topic. Thank you so much to everyone who supported me throughout this entire journey. It truly does mean so much to me, and so, from the bottom of my heart, thank you. Also, subscribe.